Today I take a subscriber's request and enter the void. Hello and welcome to RotD Review of the Day, and today I am taking the request of RotD Soul and channel subscriber The Real Shaggy, who replied to my review of Slender Man telling me that I should watch 2016's The Void. I had actually seen this movie before, fairly soon after it first came out, and my impression of it at that point was I was less than impressed. Something about it felt off and felt forced, and but at the same time, enough time had passed that I didn't feel comfortable reviewing it without a refresher, so I decided to watch it again. And this time I tried it with a different mindset, and that made all the difference in the world. For the first time I watched it, it was almost the cinematic equivalent of reaching for a Coke and picking up a lemonade, and the shocking difference of the taste buds. I like both Coke and lemonade, but when you expect one and you get the other, it can be shocking and disorienting and disturbing. And the way this movie sets itself up, it is a very different, it has a very, very strong, very big left-hand turn in its tone, and I was ill-prepared for it. So the second time I watched it, I knew a bit more what to expect, and I heard a word tossed around a fair bit, and I thought that maybe it did apply. Maybe I should have this word in my brain while I watch this movie, and that word is Lovecraftian. I love H.P. Lovecraft's writings. I am not so much a fan of the films that have been adapted from his works. I'm not a big fan of Dagon. The ones that have drawn inspiration from his works and turned it into its own thing, I think are largely successful. Guillermo del Toro, The Endless, and so forth. So I was, okay, Lovecraftian, I will put that in my brain and give it a second watch, and I did, and I loved this movie upon second watch, knowing what to expect, reaching for the lemonade, knowing that it's lemonade, and having that, I loved it. So to get into more details, let's get into the categories. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. The plot, I gave a 13 out of 25. I did love this movie, but I still think that on a plot level, it needed some refinement, it needed some development. But this followed the character of Sheriff Daniel Carter, as he is just on his normal job routine in a small town, rural route, and it's the middle of the night when somebody injured comes across his path, literally. So he takes him into the back seat and heads down the road, calls dispatch, asks the next, where's the closest emergency room, and it happens to be at a hospital that is not recovering after a fire, but actually closing down after they had a fire in a major wing of it, and but they're still operational on kind of a night crew level. One doctor and a few nurses just kind of keeping the lights on mostly. But since that was the closest, that's where he took them. And, they rush him in. And upon arriving there, they are greeted and met with the presence of hooded figures with black triangles over their faces. If you're thinking of Lovecraftian terms, by all accounts, cultists. And they are under siege in the hospital. They are not allowed to leave. There is this external force that is keeping them in there. And then the really hard left turn happens. And I'm going to spoil it for you here because it's not a spoiler to the entire movie, but it is preparing you for what is to come. And I think that with this movie in particular, that is important. This is the part that I found was just too much of a shift when I wasn't expecting it. But this definitely takes on some major practical effects, creature, tentacle, spider crab things coming out of human bodies, and very much the physical aspects of Lovecraftian horror in all the glory that you would expect out of that. When we're thinking about like the movie The Endless, that was very much more of the mental horror and the cosmic horror, whereas this movie is definitely more of the physical horror of Lovecraft and the elder, not so much the cosmic terrors, but the elder terrors, the elder horrors, and the elder gods kind of thing. This doesn't have any direct correlation to any specific Lovecraft mythos or monster. It draws a heavy inspiration from there, and the practical effects drew a heavy inspiration from John Carpenter and David Cronenberg. And I just wasn't expecting that the first time around, but I was the second. And knowing what I was and thinking of in Lovecraftian terms, it worked really well. Now, the reason the plot is scored so low, it's 13 out of 25, is this was average, and some of it was really intriguing, but from a plot level, they left a lot unanswered. And I know some of that was purposeful. I know they wanted us to fill in a lot of the blanks, but it still felt it should have been filled in a bit more. There was too much left to the imagination, and in that, we got a bit of a void of storyline. So I'm all for not answering everything and not putting a tidy bow on everything and leaving it up to the audience to think about. This just felt a little bit too Swiss cheesy on that level. The Intent, I gave a 20 out of 25. This is where the score starts ramping up dramatically. I really loved the practical effects. What they managed to put up on the screen for a fairly low budget was extraordinarily impressive. The blood effects, the creature effects, the monster effects, the monster designs, everything that they were able to pull off in this was just terribly impressive, and that's what they wanted to do, was have strong characters, some good amount of scares, kind of a survival element, and this strong visual style, and I think that it really pulled it off on all fronts there. The acting, I would say nothing earth-shattering, nothing Academy Award-winning. I mean, a few years have passed now, and clearly that hasn't happened. But honestly, still pretty darn good. Aaron Poole as Daniel Carter was actually really good. I liked his performance in this. The supporting cast did a very admirable job. I don't think there was a cheesy, hammy, or bad performance in the lot here. And the technical, I gave a 24 out of 25. This is where the movie shined the most. The fact that they were able to pull off so many practical effects on screen and do it on such a low budget and do it so well. This was really impressive. I mean, if you like The Thing, you are going to love this movie. This has shades of it written all over it. And yes, it drew inspiration from John Carpenter, but it doesn't steal from him. The creature designs were unique and interesting, and I was just darned impressed with this, but also the lighting and the camera work and the editing. It wasn't just, foam latex, making its appearance, and that's all the movie had to it. It really was decently done on a technical level, and I was just terribly impressed. I don't really have an issue with CG as a rule. I think it's a great tool to have in the toolbox. But there is something in me that just gets giddy when I see foam rubber being hit with an axe and having Caro syrup pumped through tubes. It really is fun. And this movie did have a strong, it had a dark element to it, it had a scary element to it, but it also had a fun element to it from an audience's perspective, certainly not from the character's perspective. So that gives us a total of 76 out of 100 points. I highly recommend this movie, which I'm surprised about. Thank you, The Real Shaggy, for getting me to watch this again. I was not expecting to give The Void a high score, but here we are. I absolutely would recommend it. So that should about do it for this review. That should about do it for The Void. I thank you for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.